rooster morn to a city fair rode I. There are mad lines of marching men in squadrons past me by. No fife did hum nor battle drum did sound its dread tattoo, but the Angelus bells o'er the Liffey swell rang out through the foggy dew. Right proudly high over Dublin town they hung out the flag of war. 'Twas better to die 'neath an Irish sky than at Sulva or Soodlebar. And from the plains of royal Meath strong men came hurrying through, while Britannia's Huns with their long-range guns sailed in through the foggy dew. 'Twas Britannia bade our wild geese go, that small nations might be free. But their lonely graves are by Sulva's waves, or the shore of the great North Sea. Oh, had they died by Pierce's side, or fought with Calbrew, their names we would keep where the Fenians sleep, 'neath the shroud of the foggy dew. But the bravest fell, and the requiem bell rang mournfully and clear, for those who died that Easter tide in the springing of the year. And the world it gaze in deep amaze at those fearless men, but
Noise by Seamus Costello, Memorial Committee, Éirígí and Independent Workers Union. I would like to welcome you all here today to hear our guest speaker, Dick O'Carroll, who is grandson of 1916 martyr councillor Richard O'Carroll and a member of the Independent Workers Union. Charlie Kavanagh will enlighten us about our comrades who are buried in this graveyard. Brendan McGrain will read the proclamation and roll of honour. At this time, I would like you to remember our fallen comrades and those who are all in prison. We will now have the lowering of the flags. We will now have the reclaim by Sean Doyle, Éirígí candidate in the local elections, on behalf of the Seamus Costello Memorial Committee. I would also like to call on Leila Hughes to raise a lily on behalf of Seamus Costello Memorial Committee. Leon Hughes to lay a lily on behalf of Éirígí, and Julie Davis to lay a lily on behalf of the IWU. As we stand by this great man's graveside, I would like you to remember Seamus fought and died by trying to achieve a broad front, which we're all basically on the same road as that now. I would like to call on Dick O'Carroll to deliver his speech, please.
Friends and comrades, I consider it an honour to be offered the opportunity to talk today at James's graveside. Some of us here present have been coming to this hallowed spot for the past 37 years, at least twice a year, Easter and October. Over these years, many well-known names with eloquent tongues have stood here and paid homage to the memory of Seamus. Laura Connolly O'Brien was one such speaker, the daughter of James Connolly. She declared here on this spot that Seamus Costello was the only true interpreter of forefathers' teachings that she knew of. Bernie McCalliskey too stood here and spoke of the unaffordable loss of Seamus Costello to the national struggle and to the altogether bigger and much more important struggle, that being the establishment of a 32-county socialist republic. We are currently in the throes of the worst housing crisis since the foundation of this state, with 90,000 people alone on the housing list in the Dublin area. Let's just take a quick look at those who purport to be our betters. What's regarded as the top strata of our society, the privileged few. It includes bankers. Bankers who defraud their customers and investors on a regular basis, while awarding themselves interest-free loans and claiming outrageous salaries and exorbitant bonuses. It includes politicians, claiming bogus expenses, defrauding the inland revenue, flaunting planning regulations and accepting bribes from developers, while nepotism runs rife in the corridors of power. We mustn't forget the great and the good who give of their time on the boards of some of our big charities. It must be taxing to have to dine in the Westbury Hotel every few months for a mere $400,000 per annum, while the real heroes of our charity, the common people, go unrecognised. Have a thought too for the poor solicitors struck off for defrauding their customers, ordinary people. There we mentioned barristers and judges who've been playing fast and loose with the law for years. Remember the tribunals, the Mahon, Morrissey, Moriarty, and the planning tribunals. These people managed to talk themselves into the record books, and at the same time talk the taxpayer out of 100 million plus, with no conclusions and no one jails. Laughable if it weren't so serious. Finally, let's not forget our own ever-present watchers, those guardians of the law who see to it we plebs don't get above our station, while making sure that the ruling class never see the inside of a courtroom. This is a mere glance at the top end of society, the ones who help to keep us subjugated. So, friends and comrades, before we leave here today, I'd like to say I'm aware there's a lot of gloom in what I've had to say, but I'm of the opinion that the people of this country have been dealt the worst possible hand, a series of rotten low blows by those who purport to represent them. And why? A cohort of developers and bankers and compliant politicians have destroyed our economy, the extent of which we still haven't been told. Our country has been sold to the Bundesbank, and the bill to fix this is being handed to the working class. It sickens me to the pit of my stomach that those responsible go unpunished. The system has closed ranks, the media play their game, and the innocent bear the brunt. There should have been a revolution here 5 years ago. This society is corrupt to the core. Not even our trades union SIPTU is exempt. So the people are leaderless. But if we, the people who are at the coalface of this inequitable payback, don't use the time they have to change society, to enlighten their friends and neighbours, to stand up for ourselves once and for all, and condemn the we condemn the generations to come to a life of subservience. So Republicans, I'll finish with a quote from a famous land leaguer, James Vinton Lawler. He said, "They have rights who will defend them." I've done. Over to you.
Thanks, Dick. Still a lot of passion and fire in the furnace there, Dick. I'd now like to call on the Encyclopedia of Bray, Charlie.
I got loaded notice of this, by the way. Wednesday night, 10 o'clock.
So you wouldn't back out, Charlie?
Remember back in the main things we like, so. But yeah, it was great to hear Dick talking there about that. Like, it reminded me of Liam Miller's father walked the war to choose their own masters. He was right. This graveyard, there's a lot of people, contrary to what some people would tell you, even if you can find there are no Republicans in St. Peter's Cemetery. You can go back to 1913 with the formation of volunteers. Joe Kenny was a member of the IRB. He lived in Woodbine Terrace, and he helped set up the National Volunteers at the time. And 600 men paraded in the Carlisle grounds at the time. But unfortunately, they split, like in everything in Irish Republicanism anyway. They left with partly 2 men, which with the Republican volunteers, the rest went out to fight for the freedom of a small nation, or the defend imperialism, as James Connolly called it. He was right too. But there were a number of men here from Bray who fought in Easter week. The 2 Mulveys, Nicky and Stephen. He walked into Dublin on the Monday, and they took an active part. They were actually in the GPO. And Stephen Mulvey was one of the ones that carried out James Connolly on a stretcher out of it. He's buried here. Both of them are actually buried here. And then there was a Frank Leggett, Luke Leggett. He fought through 1916 and the War of Independence. And Bob Ford got halfway into Dublin and he was arrested and detained and sent to Frangach, the university. That's where they sent most of the prisoners after the rising. But there's also a captain out of the Citizen Army here, Metcalf, buried in the graveyard. And he left the Citizen Army along with 25% of it because they didn't want anything to do with the volunteers. And personally, my own personal opinions, they were right, because they were fighting for the Social Republic and the other people were fighting for what Mellows called fighting more to choose their own masters, or their right to exploit the working class. And I don't make any apologies for that. In order to James Connolly, you have to organise and educate. And we must organise the working class and educate our kids in this. I was involved with James Costello in 1966. When I got into Connolly Youth, I left that because he was kicking up over housing. Now I wasn't married and I wasn't looking for a house, but he organised it so well, and the work he was doing in this town, he built up an organisation in this town, nothing could match it. Like, he'd done a lot of work, and it was a privilege to know him. And anyway, but that's just a small little bit about this graveyard. So don't ever let anyone tell you there's no Republic in this graveyard.
I went to Charlie was an encyclopedia, didn't I? I'd now like to call on Brandon to read the proclamation.
Public na Éireann, the provisional government of the Irish Republic to the people of Ireland. Irish men and Irish women, in the name of God and of the dead generations from which you received her tradition of nationhood, Ireland, through us, summons her children to our flag and strikes for freedom. Having organised and trained her manhood through her secret revolutionary organisation, the Irish Republican Brotherhood, and through her open military organisations, the Irish Volunteers and the Irish Citizens Army. Having patiently perfected her discipline and resolutely waited for the right moment to reveal itself, she now seizes that moment, and supported by her exiled children in America and by gallant allies in Europe, but relying in the first on her own strength she strikes in full confidence of victory. We declare the right of the people of Ireland to the ownership of Ireland, to the unfettered control of Irish destinies, to be sovereign and indefeasible. The long usurpation of that right by a foreign people and government has not extinguished the right, nor can it ever be extinguished except by the destruction of the Irish people. In every generation, the Irish people have asserted their right to national freedom and sovereignty. 6 times during the last 100 years, they have asserted in arms, standing on that fundamental right, and again asserting it in arms in the face of the world. We hereby proclaim the Irish Republic as a sovereign, independent state, and we pledge our lives and the lives of our comrades in arms to the cause of its freedom, of its welfare, and of its exaltation among the nations. The Irish Republic is entitled to and hereby claims the allegiance of every Irishman and Irishwoman. The Republic guarantees religious and civil liberties, equal rights and equal opportunities to all its citizens, and declares its resolve to pursue the happiness and prosperity of the whole nation and all of its parts, cherishing all the children of the nation equally, and of the difference carefully fostered by an alien government which have divided a minority from the majority in the past. Until our arms have brought the opportune moment for the establishment of a permanent national government, representatives of the whole people of Ireland and elected by the suffrages of all her men and women. The provisional government hereby constituted will administer the civil and military affairs of the Republic in the trust for the people. We place the cause of the Irish Republic under the protection of the Most High God, whose blessing we invoke upon our arms. And we pray that no one who serves that cause will dishonour it by cowardice, inhumanity or rapine. In this supreme hour, the Irish nation must, by its valour and discipline, and by the readiness of its children to sacrifice themselves for the common good, prove itself worthy of the angle and destiny which it is called. Signed on behalf of the Provisional Government, Thomas J. Clark, Sean McDermott, Tomas McDonough, P.H. Pearce, Eamon Keant, James Connolly and Joseph Plunkett.
Thanks, Brendan. I'm sure you all agree with me that was one of the best readings of the proclamation we've probably heard for a long time. I'd now like to call on Sean, the Éirígí candidate, to say a few words.
I'm not going to keep you long. I consider myself very fortunate, like most people here, that knew Seamus. You've heard the expression by some people that we envy people of faith. We have been privileged knowing the likes of Seamus Costello to have inspiration. An inspiration that was given to us with Seamus in that chain of command from Connolly, Tone and those who went before them. But for me in my lifetime, it was Seamus that broadened my horizons. That's where I'm alive. That's where my adrenaline comes from. That's my sense of identity as outlined by Dick. With all the facts we have before us, we also need spirit. But that spirit, as Connolly quoted, he said, you can kill us or jail us, but out of our prisons or graves, we will evoke a spirit that mayhap rise a force that will destroy you. We have this is our tradition, this is who we are, and we in turn will pass this on to the next generation. Thank you.
Thanks, Sean. I'd just like to thank everybody for coming here today.